go ahead and, are you ready, Terry? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'm gonna ask to start with introductions. Start with the inner horseshoe first and then go on the outside. So Mary.
I'm Mary Kane, Senior Legal Counsel.
Eddie Wong, Board Committee Member.
I'm Michelle DePass, Board Committee Member.
Julia Brum Edwards, Board Member and Committee Chair.
Ms. Large, Contractor General Counsel, and I forgot something in the office, so I'm going to that one section.
Rachel Lent, Paralegal.
Ms. Anne Collins, Board Manager. Kara Bradshaw, Executive Assistant.
Patty, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, hi, Patty Sullivan, board member.
My name is Eileen Diver, and I'm giving testimony. Susan Roosevelt here. Katie Armin Roosevelt Council. Maya Coyle, Van Gelderen, Vernon. Beth Kavanaugh, Hosford and Cleveland parent.
Megan Remis, Laurel Spirit.
Swan Sally Gangster.
Rosewood Heights.
John Gresham with the Roses, usually. Herschel Soul of the same group.
Carly Retorta, Roosevelt parent.
Ian Retorta, Roosevelt student.
And Terry Proctor, Communications Department.
Great, thanks everyone for joining us today. Appreciate everybody here. In terms of the agenda, we're going to start with public comment. And at a certain point, Director Green is going to join us virtually. He has asked us to consider agenda item number 3, so he is going to just share a little bit about what he is proposing and why. So with that, Kara, would you like to call those who have signed up for public comment?
Yes. Smith, Lay.
And you have 2 minutes, and please state your name when you start. And if you have anything you want to give to us that's longer, feel free to send it to the record.
My name is Smith Lay, L-A-I, and I use she, her pronouns. My kids have attended Scott, Rosewood Heights, and McDaniel, none of which have foundations. Almost 2 years ago, I participated in a PPS-led roundtable discussion about school-based fundraising, where members of schools without foundations discussed the many reasons for reforming the foundation policy. That night, we talked about the nature of individual school-based fundraising, how we had seen within our own schools that it can exclude families and undermine a sense of community and shared purpose across the district. Many of us felt that there was a lack of greater understanding in the PPS community about the vast disparity in school experience. The woman who sat beside me at the roundtable, Jamila Rashid, who is a Roosevelt parent, later provided testimony at a policy committee meeting and said, "There is no dignity in being handed a small cut of wealthier schools' funds." The current policy helps to perpetuate a broad, connected system of inequity, including partial enrollment balancing, school closures, and teacher and principal retention. This system constructs walls preventing integration in our neighborhoods and schools. I'm talking about policy and practices that draw red lines in our city today. It's necessary to rewrite policy that currently segregates our communities and feeds the good versus bad schools narrative. According to the Lincoln High School newspaper's editors, reforming the policy is an opportunity to see that whether our school lies in the east, west, north, or south, we are connected by our shared experience of this beautiful city. It will be a shared acknowledgement that the things that make this city good for one of us makes it good for all of us. So, as a member of the original community roundtable called together to advise on the current policy, I hope that you will move forward with option number 2, prepared by PPS staff. We need a new start with new tools. Tinkering around with the old tools that design this flawed system does not lend space to new voices or better solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I should just clarify, both of the options I built based on the framework and the options that had been shared previously. Just, it wasn't, I didn't put this one on.
Beth Kavanaugh. That's what I don't know
if I should give this to, I just printed, this is some of the data I refer to in my testimonies. It actually was sent to you in email before the last date, so. Good afternoon. My name is Beth Kavanaugh, Cavaanaugh, she, her pronouns. I have students at Hosford and Cleveland, and I'm an organizing member of the Reform PPS funding group. When I first gave public comment to this committee 3.5 years ago, the foundation fundraising policy had been sitting at the bottom of committee agendas for a year already as future work. Every time this reform is delayed, we must educate a new committee and new community members on the facts. Once again, we're at a point where if the committee chooses to do nothing, a policy that the PPS community finds problematic will continue for another year. I ask you to please set a timeline tonight that allows the full board to make meaningful change to this policy within the school year. Forward momentum has often stalled because of concerns about losing fundraising dollars. But in reality, we don't know how much a district-wide foundation would raise in PPS. We do know that the only other local districts that raise funds for FTE do it through a district-wide model, and they consistently raise more dollars per student than PPS's model does. As you can see in the document I provided, Tiger Tualatin and Lake Oswego raise far more money per student than PPS. Delaying change to a district-wide model could just as easily be holding PPS back from raising more money. But more importantly, it delays the much-needed unification of our communities to build advocacy for funding schools with public dollars, something that would be much more impactful and sustainable from a resource perspective. We're not that far away. Today's meeting materials offers 2 options for reforming the current policy. Option 1 is overly complicated, costly, and difficult to implement. By offering district funds only to schools that don't fundraise for staff themselves, parents who care deeply about and are skilled in raising funds for public schools are de-incentivized to raise money. This option also maintains the division between schools that are able or not able to fundraise for staff positions. Option 2, on the other hand, encourages school communities to work together to raise funds for staff as one united district through fundraising, transparency, and advocacy. With a few clarifications, we support this option and ask that you move forward with it, finalizing language to refer to the full board in your next meeting. Thank you.
Ailey Gilbert.
Hello, committee. My name is Eiley Dibert, D-E-I-B-E-R-T. I didn't know foundations existed until a few weeks ago. And as someone who talks at length about the things that make me angry, I have learned most of my friends weren't aware of their existence either. This is because our schools have never had foundations. Without knowing about this system, we haven't had the opportunity to tell you how we feel about it. I'm here now to be a voice for my Roosevelt community. I grew up in North Portland. I attended Cesar Chavez and now Roosevelt. And it isn't a secret to students that majority low-income and POC schools like mine have worse educational outcomes, a disparity that is further exacerbated in Portland by the presence of foundations. I want to be clear. All public schools are underfunded. Foundations are a stopgap measure, but not for the vast majority of PPS schools, which means the money foundations raise creates a significant difference between their school's educational outcomes and ours. My school's fundraisers are limited. It just isn't possible for our families to give as much, and my peers feel this difference. When Lincoln beats us in sports, speech, or any other competition, we joke, well, they have a grand piano in their foyer. By which we mean we are on the same level. We never stood a chance. So when we hear about swim practice held at the private mat club or pre-SATs proctored in the Tiffany Center, it sows resentment from our communities to theirs. Roosevelt has always taken pride in being the underdog, but it is tiring to consistently have less, to exist under a policy that treats us like we aren't as worthy. This isn't up to me. It's up to you. Moving away from school-based foundations toward a district-wide foundation will advance racial equity and unify our district. Foundation reform would send a message to students on the north side. We matter too. We matter just as much. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Mervis.
My name is Megan Mervis, and as I said, I'm a parent at Laurelhurst. And I want to thank you for your ongoing work on foundation reform. Today, I wanted to address policy option 2, as it best embodies the goal of a unified PPS community working together on behalf of all students. It's also the solution that has broad support across the district. As evidence of that support, In May 2021, we submitted a letter to Director Rita Moore and the board signed by PTA and PTO leadership across the district in favor of foundation reform. Following the McDaniel Roosevelt Roundtable in June of 2022, the district summarized the feedback as, there is a strong interest in shifting to a district-wide fundraising effort, particularly for staffing and other essential services that should be provided through publicly funded education. At the community work session on foundations led by Director Hollins in early 2023, there were many calls for moving to a district-wide foundation. Our reform group's Change.org petition has over 500 local signatures calling for a change to the way fundraising for staff is done. And similarly, an open letter from our group in 2023 asking PPS to move to a district-wide foundation was signed by over 550 parents, caregivers, students, and community members from 75 different schools. Oscar Ponteri, I'm saying his name right, his January 2023 article in the Franklin Post summarized it this way. Despite their opposing viewpoints, all sides agree that foundations shouldn't need to exist in order for students to receive the resources they deserve. The Lincoln Cardinal Times editorial board stated in April 2023, imagine the good that could be done if the banner doesn't just fly over the Commons Room of Lincoln, but the whole of PPS, switching to a general fund to change the way we see our place in the district, a smaller representative to a collection of school communities. Since 2018, the CBRC has called for the district to change the way it allows fundraising for staff. And we are grateful to see that there is obvious support from this policy committee to move forward with reform. What we've heard time and time again, loud and clear, is support for a district-wide foundation, most importantly from those at schools without the means to raise significant amounts of money, but also for many at schools with foundations, like mine. This is where we can come together, move forward with courage and hope, and unite the district under a single shared purpose and effort with a district-wide foundation. We see this as a win for the promise of public education for all. Thank you.
Sorry, that
Yes. Thank you for comments. Let's kick off our meeting. I'm gonna take care of two housekeeping things before we dive into the first topic. One, item 3B, which is the school initiation and school closure policy. I have had an issue with version control of the drafts, and I didn't have a chance to look at the new versions, so I'm just gonna wait till the next meeting. I think we're gonna have a pretty full meeting anyway. So I appreciate you getting your comments in. It's on me, I just had looked in because dive into it. And then the second issue is, I just want to note that we can just cross off the policies and public comment period. While this committee did recommend, and then we had our first reading of the ethics and conflict of interest policy at the last board meeting, we had some added language that is not necessarily significant or material, but it is a change. And so instead of approving it at our last board meeting, we decided to hold it over so that if anybody had comments on the new added language, I say it's relatively minor and just aligning with state statute. But if there's no comment received, Roseanne, if we could get this on, have this for a second reading on the next available board meeting, that would be great. Obviously, if we have substantive comments that would make us want to change it or reconsider it, we could pull it back, but otherwise we could put on the 20th. Okay, great. Okay, so just those two. So the topic that is first up, and I want to make sure that we get to all three of the items today. So I'm gonna just think about our how we divide this time up. I'm gonna say Director Green, that's about 10 minutes, and then we'll have 30 minutes for the other two topics. Does that work? And, sorry, so back comes backwards, but I want everybody to know kind of what to expect here. For the, diploma requirements, changes that we have some recommendations from staff. What Director Wong and I discussed, since he's the chair of the Student Success Committee, is we're gonna hear about the changes today and what's being proposed, gather any sort of questions, and then probably look at this committee and just get out from there.
Is there further direction for staff on which goes to which committee when it's a policy related to?
What we talked about suggesting is that Michelle and I join, a committee meeting that day. It's,
I mean, for other topics, so.
no, this is probably like a rare topic. In the past, we didn't have a student, I mean, we haven't had one since 2018.
That's fine, I'm just.
Okay, yeah, I would say like policy should just generally go to the policy committee, because it's the policy committee. This has, it's a topic that, there's interest in some other things besides just the changes that were made, and those would probably better be discussed in Director Wong's committee than here. Does that make sense? Okay. We're also gonna just try to avoid duplication, so not have successive, curricular processes going. So, you may get invited to a future.
Okay. When are those meetings?
March. Tuesday, Monday.
We thought like today, at least we can get out on the table, like what substantively is being proposed, what questions do we have, and go from there.
Questions, get out, have to accept.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
we can make sure that we get to those meetings.
I haven't checked.
Okay.
Yes, they are, thank you. Don't usually respond to.
So I'm gonna spend just a few minutes framing up the next agenda item topic. So since I got on the board from 2017, this has been a topic, and I thought today I'd just bring my file that's just on this one policy. Just as an acknowledgement of how much discussion there has been, and there are really are a lot of different viewpoints within our school community about fundraising for staff. So I'd start with that. I also, the next meeting, I will resurrect the, you were on a committee a couple years ago when you asked for more community engagement, especially with communities with not necessarily have been engaged. We have summaries of that, so I'll just sort of elevate that again. That was pre-coded. Also, we did a principal survey, I believe, so we have that. And we can share that as well. And I will say, I apologize to anybody in the community, for those in the community who have been impatient this year with the pace of things. We did not want to move forward. We tried to sort of clear off most of the board committees meetings during the fall when the strike was going on, just knowing that that was probably the most important thing for the district to resolve and get settled and get our kids back in school. So a couple meetings were canceled. And then Director Scott and I had the assignment of the recruiting of the interim superintendent. And that became my focus. So apologies for everyone for the sort of delay in carrying this over, but I think ready to have the conversation about I think some different options. And I posted online, or posted for this with this week's meeting agenda is a document that I put forward or created of sort of here are the different ways based on 6 years of discussion of the different options of what we could potentially do. And they range from everything from do nothing, just leave it as it is, to a host of different kind of leverage, changing different maybe limitations or, you know, creating different governance models or structures as sort of what I think I captured the main ideas that have been put forward by different people in the school community. Again, there's a diversity of opinion in our school community on the topic. So I tried to capture all those. And then I created 2 potential options. I figured I didn't need to create an option on maintaining the current system because it's what it is. It's what we've had for 6 years, or had for longer than that. I would say that if that were what the board wanted to do, that it should all go into policy because frankly, the 1/3 split is just a memo and not embedded in policy. So that were the direction that I would say we still should clean things up. So I tried to come up with 2 other alternatives that I do believe capture some of the most important elements of the changes that people have proposed. And I hate to do this, but I'm also seeing Director Green, and would you all be okay if I can just flip?
I think that's,
Director, sorry.
we're just gonna put it again. It's okay.
Yeah.
You could do her.
You're not a speaker. You're on mute, Director Green.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to interrupt, so
Okay,
I've
so
looked
I
at
was
them.
on a roll and then I saw you up there. So we spoke briefly before you got on the phone that you were gonna come on and talk about and we can talk later in the committee meeting about sort of next steps. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to share why what you're proposing and why in terms of this specific policy.
Absolutely, and I'm assuming that we're referring to the JROTC program.
Yes.
Okay. The reason that I wanted to look at the policy is after talking with several students from a few different schools and realizing that there was some interest there, and then speaking to some administrators to figure out if there's interest from the students, then why what is the resistance in the schools? It became apparent that there was a barrier around understanding of what we could do and what we couldn't do, and what was authorized and what wasn't. Understanding that the JRTC programs aren't for every student, and the students that would benefit, that could benefit from this something like this, are the students that want this the most. It's not going to be for every student. It's not for, and I don't feel like every student in the building should be required to take it or have to go through it. However, for those students that this would benefit, for those students that would be interested in something like this, understanding that where we sit now, we understand that college is not for everyone. So getting beyond the model that says, if you don't go to a 4-year college, then you're not a success. Then if we move beyond that, then what are some of the other options? And I believe what we start to look to is our trades, our career programs, which is why I believe that this should be housed under the careers aspects of things, because the military is not everybody that goes through JRTC is going to go to the military, but what they learn in JRTC could lead them to a career that furthers them around their path to take care of themselves, take care of their family, and to better serve our community. And so I want us to look at this from a careers perspective, and I want to see us give this the same level of attention that we give all of our other CTE programs. So I don't feel like the military should have any special treatment whatsoever. Like, I don't want them to get anything that no one else does. I also want to make sure that we're not making them jump through hoops that we don't make any other career program or career path go through. And so by looking at this policy and by bringing this policy up, it gives our administrators who are interested in something like this a pathway to go down to present to say, here is the rule per se that says that gives me the authority to do it. And that's what I'd like to see happen with this. Again, is it for every student? No. Is it for every school? Probably not. But should they all have the opportunity to say no? Absolutely. Should they all have the opportunity to determine whether or not this is something that they could benefit from? Absolutely. And we as adults shouldn't allow our biases to get in the way of that student making that decision for themselves. Nor should we allow our biases to get in the way of an administrator who wants to provide this opportunity for his students and his site and his community. So I want to see, I believe that this policy revision or this revision creates a pathway where we can get out of our own way and open up the door for those that want to consider this further.
Thank you, Director Green, and I clarify this. So 2 changes being proposed, the change in the title and also adding a additional short paragraph or sentence on junior reserve officer training for and I understand also, Director Green, based on a conversation, that you would like to add an additional clause before that 3rd paragraph that just says in coordination with the superintendent or their designee. Is that
That's correct? That is
Okay.
correct.
So thank you for coming to explain it. We will have a future committee discussion about it when we have somebody from the CTE team who can come speak to this or answer questions we have. So I would ask, and after we can circle back after this, but for people, if you have questions, we should get them submitted. Just what is it? Do other schools do it?
If it's curricular, does it go to the A's committee or does it stay here?
This is another instance.
Here's
And it's
where
we're
there's an
proposed to the
intersection.
CTE, so it would be a curricular, not a recruitment, so that's the difference. So what Chris Ryder will be speaking to is developing it as a CTE curricular option.
So in some ways, I'd like to have that discussion later because I want to get back to the other topic. I view this as more just like an authorization versus here's what it actually is in it.
Details. I have questions about. I have a lot of questions about.
Well,
it.
let's do that.
Could we set time to talk or have those questions answered?
Yes,
I'd
I just
to
want
do
to
a
let.
little bit more research.
We're not moving it.
Yeah, but in terms of process,
Yes.
when will we talk?
So I want to let Dr. Green just get his idea on the table, and when we get back to that point of the session, we'll collect questions and we'll see what else people want to know or who you want to hear from.
Excellent.
For sure, we want to hear from students as well.
I'd also be interested to find out if what we're doing here, if the things that we're putting in front of this are these the same types of things that we put in front of every other CTE program. So I feel like every program should be have the ability to answer questions and to go through all that. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm looking to is to understand is are the hurdles that we're going through, the stuff that that we go through, are we doing this for every CTE program that we enlist within PPS? Because if we are, then great. If we're not, then I want to know why we're doing something different, right? So it's not about whether or not we should or we should. If we look at this as this is a career opportunity, then are we up? Because what I want to make sure that we're not doing in all of this, regardless of who I talk to or who we talk to or who has the conversation, what I want to make sure that we're not putting in front of our young people are politics. I don't want to do politics. I want to talk about career opportunities. I want to talk about, are these viable opportunities that could bring a student success, viable opportunities that could bring a school success, viable opportunities that could bring a community success, and so take care of a few things. I don't have room for politics, and so that's what I want to make sure that that we get real clear on, because it's.
Director Green, I appreciate that, and we will make sure once we understand what the questions people have, what information we're looking for, we welcome you to come back to the committee and be part of the committee discussion.
I love talking about anything.
And I just want to clarify, I'm curious about it, like, I have a lot of questions, like, is it going to be offered at every school, and,
So
yes, let's say,
those types of.
let's say.
Absolutely fair, absolutely fair.
just clarifying question. So like, because I know CT has a process. But it's how you signify that they're separate.
Director Wong,
Yeah.
can we wait till later and have this?
I'm just curious, like, is this
We can have it
separate?
we can have it in this committee meeting. I just want to get back to the other topic. I wanted to because we could talk about this for a long time. I wanted Director Green just to get on to be able to here's what I was trying to do, and then we'll have more committee meetings and discussions. But I do want, because it's moved back to the agenda for almost the whole year, to get back to the topic. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we for sure will leave room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you're welcome to come back, Director Green, or stay.
I would love to. Just let me know when.
Okay, sounds good.
Those,
Thank you for allowing
Thank
us
you.
to.
No problem.
and y'all all look lovely tonight.
Thank you.
As do you.
So back to the two options. So essentially, the two options are, maybe I walk through option 2 first, and then option 1. Option 1, it probably needs to be have additional revisions. What I try to do is mimic a little bit what we did this year, in which all schools had some additional resources. Because what it meant is, for the first time, schools that don't have foundations and get equity funds had actually the ability to have some discretionary funds where they could utilize it in ways that was customized for their school community, versus many times the equity funds, it's very directive of how they have to spend it. And then for the schools that don't necessarily get equity funds but also don't have foundations, they had the ability to say, we're going to do another, add another 0.5, so we have a full-time, art person, and maybe a 0.2, so we have a full-time PE teacher, or we're going to do 2 EAs. So they had the ability to sort of customize things for their schools. So that is really what option 1 was trying to do, is in some ways mimic that. And there are some inherent issues that we need to have the resources to do that. And then option 2 is the shift from having school-based fundraising being allowed to purchase staff to moving to a centralized foundation where staff could still be purchased, but it would be done at the district level. And so the money would be gathered centrally and then distributed, pretty much the model that almost all of the school districts use if they have a robust sort of private fundraising. In addition, both of these policies tried to capture other issues that were raised over the last 6 years. So I'll just talk about the registration, so we have an understanding of who's raising money. There is donations are being made to the schools, that we have some visibility that who's involved with that and who do we contact. The 990s are available. So it's again more like a transparency issue. In addition, under other requirements, so both options have this. This was the first bullet point, which is really meant to have inclusive fundraising events. And this came out of from the district staff of, how would you do that so that we don't have events that the ticket price excludes part of the school community. The second bullet is falls into the category, and this came out from some of the parent feedback I've received, where in some schools there's an expected per family or per student fundraising target. If you have 2 students in school, we expect a donation or for you to raise X amount, which community members have the abilities to raise different amounts of money or to donate it. So the easiest thing, if you have the resources, just donate it. You don't have to go out and fundraise it. So putting different requirements on different families and to really have that not be part of the practice in a public school system. It's often something that happens in private schools, but not in public schools. And then the third bullet, include and inform the broader school community about fundraising and decision-making processes. Again, that's a transparency issue within the school community. And then the last bullet point is adhere to district policies and administrative enforcement requirements, which standard and we can agree to have. I think that's our expectation. And then probably there'd be like an annual review with budgeting that board would get a superintendent and other provisions. The district's foundation would have a board of directors representative of the broader school community and their large members. So that's a high level. Like here's the 2 policies. They have some things in options, and like I say that obviously the third option is do nothing, or we could look at some other variation, but these seem to be the ones that listening to board members and community members had the most directionally in line with what I was hearing. And in all practical terms, that means for next school year, the current, because the practice now is that you have to identify and pay for staff by June 30th, that this cycle would allow that. I mean, money's actually actively being raised. But that after June 30th, that would be, at least in option 2, that would be not allowed anymore. So which would really be for the 25-26. So school communities within the school year having done, if they had foundations with their fundraising, they would have said what staff they're going to purchase and then have paid that by June 30th. And then, so that would see for next year. And that starting July 1,
Starting 2025?
2025, 26, it would be like you're not heading into the school year knowing that you're going to be having a fundraiser for staff. Doesn't mean you can't raise money for things.
Clarify, so all the money raised from now to June 30th would apply towards FTE for the 2024-25, right?
Right. Which, how it used to be is like literally, they could raise money during the school year to pay for staff that they already had. And one of the things that changed in 1919, 1920 was that they then had a deadline that they actually had to pay for before they could encumber administrators. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Director Sullivan.
Yes, one thing I think is really important is who decides how to distribute the funds if it's a whole group. And I'm really interested, you're saying that other districts have a way of doing this, and I'd be interested in seeing how that works for them, how they decide how to distribute it. And I think that would be very important in getting people to be more interested in a whole, district-wide fundraising.
That's a great question, Director Sullivan. So, we'll get that.
Kind of the mechanics of how it works, if Tiger Dwell
I just did some quick math, about, so based on these other school districts. So if PPS raised the same amount per student as Tiger Tualatin, we could raise, it'd be $10 million, which would not be insignificant.
but and their median income household is also lower than in Portland.
Yeah.
So relative to what the median is,
I just drove that by.
there could be a multiplier to add, for the additional median income. We could raise even more than
Always the math person.
that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We'll try and get an answer, and we'll try and get it in advance so that you have that. It also, one of the things just that I was thinking about, Director Sullivan, in the, so, let's see. There is somewhere where the formula is decided by the foundation. You could have the distribution formula just be approved by, if you look at option one, the first bullet at the kind of at the bottom of the page, you'll see it says the formula is annually reviewed by the district's foundation board of directors. We could change that to the school board, or we could have the school board setting it. So just know that.
Would that change then when the board changes over, or how does that stay encoded in perpetuity?
So I hate to say it, but like nothing is in perpetuity.
Right.
Because, boards can't encumber future boards.
True, and that's what I was asking.
I would say one of the things that we need to do needs to be like front loaded at the beginning of the year so everybody knows what it would look like.
Because one of the things I see that you said in some of the options, number 10 was require the district to create a broader base equity funding formula. And so now I know we have an equity formula. And how would that fit in with the people who at this point are not getting the advantage of the equity formula, but are raising quite a bit of money?
Yeah.
So somehow we have to make that clear to how that's going to work. And it's going to be hard, especially if you can change it every year. So I think that's a very important part of the policy.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I will say, number 10, like I say, this option was like, here are all the different things we can do. My assumption is if you, that probably would be more in play if you did option 1. It's just more complicated. It's way more complicated.
Yeah, it's just, for me, I would just like to see what the other districts, how they are figuring that out for the distribution and how we could make it part of the whatever option we're voting on. At this point, I don't feel comfortable with either option. So I just think it has to be clear.
Okay.
And I personally need to know more. So that's up to me, and I'll look to you to help me get the information.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. It's a great question. I'm sure a lot of other people have that as well.
Mm-hmm.
True. I was curious about this other document that was posted, the funding of school-based staff.
Oh, yeah, that was.
And that has like an option, it's got a menu of options.
Is that together?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the work on that, by the way. So, what I'd like to understand, I guess, is I'd like to kind of see it modeled through with the numbers to see how, I'm leaning towards option 2, but to see how option 2 actually works out. I mean, does it get it closer to, making sure that all school students, all public work and public have equitable access? Which I think option 2 does, but I don't know that have we tested all these different menu options to run it through so we know what the output is.
Well,
Yeah, number 9 on that same policy is good too.
To test but we would want to test our assumptions and model out. And Beth, I think you might have provided us with a model at one point of what the current system produces versus what a different system would produce, which I don't know where it is, it's somewhere
We can
in
present
Google.
those. We have
Google
some
Docs.
information we can.
Yeah, I'd like to see it modeled out.
So I will say, like, we can't model all these ones out because they just, some of them are just different. And so, for example, let's take number 9. In policy, direct the district to create a transparent pool of FTE that schools with class sizes over a certain size can tap for additional support.
Yeah, that
Okay,
would
so-
be difficult.
Well, we proposed that in, as you may recall, as part of bargaining. I think we had like $1 million.
No, you asked me these
So
questions.
I think it was about $1 million that we had a fund, and it was when we were having all the discussions about class sizes and supports. So we, like, for example, we model it out, it's not gonna be a distribution of money, it's like, here's what it might look like. But we did offer that, for example, in BAT, make the decision to go a different direction, but we had a pool of money, and then if you came up to thresholds, you could potentially get an EA or half an EA or.
And I think that's in here above. I guess my overarching question is, which of these scenarios gets us closer to that?
I mean, frankly, I will say, and this, I think, gets to Patty's issue as well, is option number 2, and then doing the distribution on a per student basis. Because if you think about the district already saying, we have an equity formula. So our formula is equitable. And so if you just add in certain places, then it takes an equitable formula and it's a sort of, because it's random how it, I mean, somewhat how it impacts. So doing things on a per student basis would essentially take the equity formula and on a per student basis, just move everything up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It does.
But that's if you did that, if you just use it a per student.
Per student.
Then everybody'd rise up together.
Yeah, so you just take the whole formula and it'd just be, okay, say we have a pot of, say we do, we can, competitively compete with Tiger Twelton. If we get 262, we had $10 million, is like, how do you, on a per student basis, what does that mean? And then you take a school, you have X number of students, and this is how much you get.
So like on the pessimistic side, say we keep our total per student rate at 62, right? And a school like Grant at 2,000, right? That, I mean, that's the whole FTE that you can pay for, 124,000.
Versus Jefferson.
Yeah. But then we get into, I mean, that's when we go per student. I mean, I think your point of saying, like, we already have an equity formula, so we add everything, the idea is that we're moving everything up geometrically, right?
Equal, well, this
Equally.
Yes, because you have a per
Because-
student, so you're keeping your, if your assumption is the base formula is equitable, then you're just basically moving the whole formula up. You're increasing the denominator.
it's not math. Denominator, we move everything.
There you go.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. A whole other discussion. I don't want to miss on it.
does that make sense?
Yeah. Mike, can I call Mike? I think you had a comment.
Well, I was just gonna say, if you-
okay.
I know. If you have a school with 200 kids, that doesn't equal an FTE, but if you have a school with 538 kids, it does. So that's where he's coming from. That's all.
Enrollment matters.
So,
All right, thank you.
one of the things, because of our base funding, is that if you're a smaller school, you already in some ways get more staff per student because you don't have the economies of scale. I mean, obviously, in the ideal world, we would have $8 million in ESSER dollars like we did this year. Every year. Because this, to me, that is the big challenge of option number one. So maybe we talk, I think number two is pretty clear cut, and Patty asked, I think, the most sort of salient question about, how it write it out.
Somebody's hands raised again.
Your hand is raised again, Patty?
Oh, just to say, I don't think we can work this out right now, but can we have a time to look at other people's programs and see what they did? So we can have an option that feels more
Yes.
secure? Because I don't want to do an option that we can just every year make a different decision about how it happens.
We're not moving anything out of committee today. So yes, we're gonna
Okay.
take the question, get more information, so we can see how other people's do. Like I say, I spent the last 17 years in Washington County, and most of those school districts, including Beaverton and Hillsborough, all have one central foundation. And then divide the money up. They do it different ways, but
Yeah.
it all goes in centrally to rate.
But I just like to know the different ways it's done and what works and then, because, we're unique too, so. But I think it needs to be presented in a way that's clearer than now.
Yep. So option number one, I would say, I'm just gonna kind of walk through paragraphs and some, because there's some places where you can make more changes because there's, it's just a different model. And again, this is more based on something similar that we did this last year, and it required the district to have resources to put into the pot. Because essentially, it's saying, right now we have this equity formula, and there's a little bit of movement for the schools that are of highest need, because they get the equity grants, but they're
Quite a bit lower
they're
than.
not that much. And then at the other end, you get a sort of a bigger, well, I'm sorry, they're down here. These guys move up a little bit. The schools with the highest incomes that raise the most money, they go up a bunch, and then the people in the middle don't move at all. And what happened this year is, it wasn't that everybody moved up the same amount because schools could still fundraise, but essentially everybody moved up 100,000 plus $11 per student.
Right,
Was the formula.
that was for every school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
So
so
this-
this is that 100,000 per school that the principals could determine.
But we know we can't count on that this year. So it's not a viable option.
So that was not based on need, that was just how we sort of distributed.
Right. So The reason why this is complicated is like, I didn't say for, like, that if you're a school that has a foundation, you would get the 100,000 plus $11.
Right.
And-
Per student.
Yeah, and then the other question is like, if people know they would get, for example, we're gonna get 100,000, and that could be 80,000, it could be 30,000, I mean, that's a number that could change. But if, schools knew that they were gonna get that, if they didn't raise any money to pay for staff, would they still raise money to pay for staff? And so the question would be, you say, you raise this amount, you give 1/3 to, the pot, and maybe you can raise a little bit more than 100,000, say if that was, so like as an incentive, like to raise the money versus just take the district's. It's way more, it's more complicated. But like I say, I think last year was the first year that I heard the fewest amount of complaints from schools of like, hey, we didn't have an opportunity to, you know, really large kindergarten class, and we didn't have an opportunity to get an EA, or, you know, we needed the PE teacher for another, 0.3 and didn't have it. So this year, there was a lot less than that in my 11 years on the board. So that's why
Say 11.
that's why I was trying to come up with like an option, but it's just, it's more complicated. And I'm gonna walk through some of the just different points, because I want people to think about it as, because I say, it's somewhat it's like what we did this last year. So in the new paragraph 2, in the second line, we need to add the words, in like, that to be clear that the fund for the school would be the centralized place for district level fundraising for staff. Just to be clear. 'Cause I'm not-
Instead of saying just serving as a fiscal agent,
Right, because it's making it saying you're just serving for fiscal agent for those schools that have a
they
foundation.
will be the decision maker.
Yeah, well, it's making clear that you could still have money coming in centrally that then gets distributed however we decide to get distributed. That can be used for staff. It's not like there's no fundraising for staff, but it's just done centrally. So walking through here, the places where there is, you could change things is go down to equitable fundraising for staff and contracted staff. On number 2, the 100,000 and $11 per student, I just dropped that in because that's what we did last year. And I don't know what the thinking was about how we came up with that. Is that or not? Okay.
So,
But
It could be
I'm
shown.
not, what?
It may be shown.
Oh, John.
Oh, shown.
Sean.
Um,
I feel like I feel like in these conversations, every meeting, I don't have, I don't know what happens in regards.
That's okay. So, but you did give me the information, it was $100,011 per student. So you just say if you have a student body of 1,800, it's one thing if it's 200. So again, those numbers could change, you could say, hey, we're gonna shoot 50,000. And that I had is for that would be for schools that do not fund staff positions. And then when you get down into the next you get into the next bullet point, we have the first 10,000 raised, stays in school, that's current practice. The 30%, it actually, I was just using the current one, but it's actually 33%. Right, okay, that's a typo.
okay, I was wondering about that.
But you could have it be any number, you could say, okay, if they're gonna, everybody else is getting a certain amount, if they're gonna raise their own money, we're gonna say they only have to put 20% in that, you could change that. Or you could say,
We're 50.
yeah. Or you could say you can raise, 200,000, but you're gonna put 40% in. So that's I meant to use the current number, but I want you to know that that is a point where you could change it. And then later on in that paragraph, when you this is the issue of that Patty raised about, and, sorry, and Eddie, who decides what the formula is. And I do think it should be, set at the beginning of the year. You could have a 2-year biennium set so everybody knows what it is. And then in the second bullet point, when I'm at the this would be something new, that you couldn't raise more than 130,000 per school. So right now, you can raise unlimited amounts. You have to give 33%, but you can raise unlimited amounts. I have to relook at the data, but 130 covers a lot of the schools. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And again, I think this would be something you need to look at, because my guess is if you said you can only raise 130 and a third goes to the centralized foundation, that people would say, oh, well, let's not raise any this year, and we'll just take the districts. But again, it's put some sort of cap on it, because otherwise then you just are in the never ending, there'll always be schools that are raising a lot. And again, it's trying to keep the equity formula all rising together.
I'm curious how we would put a cap on what schools could raise.
Well, they just couldn't spend more than 130,000 because they have to pay the district for the staff. So you could say, okay, you want to purchase 44,000. We don't have any principals here. But it's like an EA is.
That'd be helpful. Don't know.
I think like an EA is, for example, 44,000. So you could under this say, okay, you could potentially have 3 EAs under this cap. But again, that number almost 2,000 off. Sorry, almost, yeah. But I think what we saw in a lot of the there's a lot of smoothing out. Like, we wanted to make sure that our library specialist was full time, not 0.75. Anyway,
In other words, that money would go further because it was just to cover gaps between part-time.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. Like, if you look at in the past what district schools have spent it on. But again, that number you could set it at different places. On the other requirements on the next page, this would be for both options. It says fundraising group that raise staffing funds shall, and I actually think you should just eliminate the word staffing funds, because I would think that we would want these to apply to no matter what type of fundraising you're doing. This paragraph is other requirements.
Just remove the word staffing.
And then if I move down in other places where
And then for this, it shall provide 10% of the total anticipated admission tickets. Would you not want to tie that percentage to the number of free and reduced or some other metric that kind of aligns with the poverty rate?
well, it says, or whatever percentage is needed to meet this policy, for families who wish to attend, but for whom the ticket price is superior.
That's assuming that there's only 10% of a given school that can afford it. I was one of those parents that couldn't afford fundraisers, even if I fundraised. So, okay, it's a detail.
Language to better, I think that the parentheses is what we're trying to
or whatever
Capture.
percentage is needed to meet the policy.
So if you have better language that's not a statement and then parentheses.
Okay.
If you can do it again, this should be viewed as a first draft. The second to last bullet, which says submit funds made for staff no later than, there is a current timeline, but again, it's not policy. So that would be added. And then the last bullet point, just to let people know, the designate and pay actual costs of wage and benefits for the staff member. So in the past, what's happened is some schools have used their funds to pay for the least expensive staff person versus the one that they were actually getting.
Yeah.
So this was a reform that, again, many of these things are things that the fund for PPS instituted. So this is just a carryover, and so we decided that schools would be able to. And then we have the policy, the second to last paragraph, I'm sorry, the third to last, the staffing funds must be transparent in the district prior to the staffing commitments being made. That seems like that should go up to the other requirements section. And then I feel like the district foundation shall the board of directors representing the broader school community and large member needs more work. And we would need to know what we would have as a board, given the relationship and the some IGA agreement between the fund for PPS and
So,
you.
I'm not very difficult, it's just looking at me and.
No, it's
the period.
It's a statement. I'm looking for you to like, we
do have an agreement between the district and.
Right, and so we
the
would-
areas, yes.
And so it would need to, whatever we do here needs to be in sync with that,
Yes.
if that's the vehicle.
Yes, and there are also the bylaws and the other agreement. The fund is an existing entity with its own formation document, so all of those would need to be in alignment.
I mean, historically, when it came to, so I used to be just full disclosure on the Public Schools Foundation Board, which then became All Hands, and I was there when it went from the Schools Foundation to All Hands. And they decided not to basically get involved in district level issues, but they still did the fundraising for and managed these local school foundations. And then when it came here, we carried it over because they were done managing all these small local school foundations. When it came here, then we had an agreement. We created the fund in 2018. And it has a whole bunch of documents in.
It's its own separate 501c.
Yeah.
So it's its own entity.
So, I mean, for efficiency, like, it seems like it would be easiest to use the fund PPS as the vehicle. But I'm just, because I'm trying to recognize it's like, and it's not just like one sentence here that would make that happen.
Right, there need to be a legally coordinated effort as well as a conversation. And again, this is very like-minded conversations that are very symbiotic.
But you're saying just for efficiency, it would be the vehicle. Because they're already established.
It could be, I mean,
But, and would be the alternative. So
well, you can start.
you do whatever you want.
Two district foundations has some other complexity to it.
Yeah.
We would want to talk about legally and practically, yes.
I mean, the fund for PPS, just pulling out, actually, I think it's in here somewhere. Pardon?
Yeah, okay.
I know right where it is. It's actually, I think, this blue file.
Have you heard of
It's-
Evernote?
I've never been against.
But the concept of the fund for PBS was to be like the vessel for all fundraising. So I don't think an intention of like, it's to be an avenue in which we can raise money to support our students. It fits under that umbrella. So I don't think it's antagonistic, but I'm just trying to recognize it's like, we can't just say something in policy and then it happens. Now Mary's nodding.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry that took a long time to sort of walk through the two proposals, or just two different. Any sort of top of mind thoughts or questions, or Michelle, you've identified your interest in some modeling.
And then coming up with a number that, you know, it's indexed to something, under other requirements. So it's not just 10%, it's actually tied to the poverty rate reduced.
So you're saying for the number of tickets or no?
Fundraising groups that raise staffing funds shall include in all school programs, so as a way of being inclusive, rather than limiting it to 10%, and 10% might be a good number, but if it's a school that has, 78% free reduced, that might not include all of the number of families that.
I mean, my experience is for schools, I'm gonna use the Scott pancake breakfast. It's $6.
Five.
Again,
Okay.
do not look left anymore.
No, I was thinking I mean, so it's not like
Muscle memory.
you're paying $100 to come
Yeah,
and,
my kids went to a school where I could not afford to go to fundraisers.
Yeah.
So, this is a way of not limiting the number of tickets to 10%, or at least 10%, but actually saying, if you have a higher poverty rate in your school, then that number needs to move up and be indexed to that poverty rate.
Or maybe more, allow for more agility to kind of separate each part into a different policy. For example, we have our school foundation policy, right, or district school foundation policy, and then a separate one, like, this is a policy for how to run fundraising. I feel like putting them together to make create more cumbersome, instead of separate, because that would allow it to be more fluid. Like, for example, if like one policy may change, for example, fundraising would be go. It'd be nice if that was sort of separate policy.
Or do you have a policy?
Okay, if you want to tell me I'm going off the deep end.
yeah, to me, so like, right now, we do have a foundation policy and I forget what this one used to be called, but it was something like parent fundraising. So I just picked one and put them together, more for like efficiency, so if people are looking at like, what are the rules around it?
Okay.
And so you have more than one place to go versus looking at different places. But I mean, maybe to get to your point, and also your point, Michelle, is like, you want policy to be high enough level that every time inflation changes or school community changes, that you're not like, you gotta change it from 20% to 18 or anything like this. So you should try and keep it high level enough so that
Maybe a
it's-
little vague, yes.
Well, I'm just thinking like, in my dream world, right? We have a district foundation, and let's say some billionaires want to go on rent a yacht and throw a big party where it's like $2 million entry ticket, and they're going to raise us, $50 million. I'm not going to say no to that because of that policy. I'm just
Yeah.
like what if? Right?
Okay, so here's what I would do if that happened.
Okay.
I would like draft a resolution to waive the policy for
Okay, so we have
exceptional
flexibility.
exceptional circumstances.
Okay.
I like your dream.
Yeah, I do too, to get to that.
I mean, you obviously don't want to, you want your policy to be flexible enough, like 95% of the time it
Right,
works, so you're not waiving it. But you could,
No, I agree with the spirit of it. Not being exclusive.
Well, so maybe so the policy, I mean, in a perfect world would be kind of a what, and then this is the how in the administrative directive. Like the how you do it, and how you remain accountable.
you don't have administrative directives for either faculty policies, do we?
No.
I mean, one of the things.
I was just, like, to your point, it seems like there's a lot in here. It's somewhat prescriptive in some spaces and in some parts, and I think a good policy is kind of, it is high level vague.
But not too big.
But not too big.
Or simple. Right.
So I think it makes more sense. It's especially policy manuals online to try and keep like concepts together. So it could be things that are specific, then get in more spelled out in the AD versus in the AD versus having a policy and then have to change it and have it 20 day.
Yeah, if stuff is going to be massaged over time, that where policy direction has been given, that's very helpful in AD because policy adoption process can just clarifying changes or updates to practice. Clear in the policy itself.
Okay, I'm looking at the time. What I'm gonna ask is if you, and Patty, this includes you, if you have questions or ideas or things, to send them to me. Don't do a reply all, we can't do. Yes, excellent. With that, so thank you.
Yeah.
For the great comments, and Patty will get you the information you can ask. We'll try and do some modeling, so we can, the next committee meeting, we can discuss it further.
Maybe Patty and I could, I know someone on Tiger Tualatin that we could talk to.
Great,
Mm.
I'm sure,
Too.
because this is a much scrutinized thing, I'm sure that we can find their.
It's probably, yeah, I liked doing those personal interviews.
Yeah, I know some people have told, or I think it was Julia told me that, Tiger Tualatin and Lake Oswego and different other districts have policies that include, larger money-making situations. So I'd just like to see what they are. Because I've also heard that in some ways ours has been a model, because there's some places that they keep all their money, they don't give any of it back to a central amount. So yeah, I will send my ideas to you, Julia, and I appreciate any information anybody has. I'd really like to take a look at it.
Great, and
I need
we'll also
education.
post it so everybody can see it, and it's very transparent.
Okay, great.
Switch to the next agenda item, and who's on point for this. What I like is just a very high level. So some of these changes are statutory, it's my understanding.
Yes.
And I think the statutory changes, if you can just briefly call it out, like this is a statutory change.
The diploma policy.
And then the places that aren't, if we could call those out, because obviously things that are statutory changes.
These are all statutory changes, actually.
Really?
100%. Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm pretty sure.
So,
I was hoping Yen would be.
Yeah, we thought Senator Penrose was going to be here because
do you want to tell me about the science requirements?
So,
Well, let's go back to the pancake breakfast.
So, what you see in terms of the requirement for additional, half credits, those are legislative changes, those are new requirements. We have removed the, essential skills, that has been put on hold until want to say 2027.
You know, Mary, can we just walk through
Sure.
by page? It's not-
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's 1A, so those, the social studies and science changes those, and also the ones on the next page, those are all like personal finance, those are
So the
statutory.
first, yeah, so the personal finance and the higher education career path skills are new, and they are beginning of the class of 2027. So those are going to be half credits each. We don't know a whole lot about it. ODE is still promulgating, developing the regs around this, but we wanted to get this in place. We'll
Okay,
probably
but it's statutory.
It's
Okay.
statutory. It's a requirement.
So then,
And then we've changed, and I wish Fiona could speak to this piece of it. Some of the credit requirements for, the, in terms of your personal education plan and, career-related learning experiences, those are modified slightly.
Those are great.
And then,
Learning experiences.
students develop their own portfolio, sort of like.
you're saying that is statutory or it's?
I don't recall if that is statutory, and
When
that's
you say
why.
statutory, is it, could it be regulatory or
Yeah,
statutory?
is it required is my,
I'm not sure about this, the language around this, or if this is, ours. The portfolio is required, but I don't know the specifics of it, I will say that. So I don't know if we have created this portfolio plan, but that's, we've made some changes to it.
so Mary, whether it's this committee or in, Dr. Long's committee, it seems like it would be useful on all of these to know, like, this is required because we're not gonna spend a lot of time talking about it.
Yeah.
Versus other things, like I'm really interested in for example, the essential skills, and then also there's this section. I guess it's to give the superintendent the ability to award a diploma. No, okay, never mind. I meant this, so is it the essential skills? It got delayed several times, but is it actually gone?
It's not gone, but it's been put on hold until, I want to say either 2027 or 2029. And given the many changes, my assumption was this policy will be back in front of you in,
Suspended till 27, 28.
so.
So my preference,
would be
I'll just say it
I
to
will be here.
Well,
Someone will be
Yeah, no,
here.
but
Somebody will be here.
Someone will be here to look at the diploma policy, is our hope.
so this, I guess maybe is more the work of your committee. My preference would be, would just be to put in parentheses, like, this section suspended until, by the state currently, something like that.
So it's
But
noted.
not to remove it, because one of the topics that board members, not, who aren't here, but who would like to, conversation would like to have is like, do we have any sort of base level besides just earning credits, which you can do and get Ds? Do we have some sort of standard, which I think people are like, okay, the minimal standard we have is essential skills, and now if we're taking it out, like, what is our minimal standard?
What are we doing in terms of what are,
You don't have to answer that.
thank God.
And I think a lot of us are curious about this question.
Right, which I think maybe is a way better question to have in your committee. But I'll just say, like, I would be hesitant to remove this when it's actually not been deleted from,
It's just been held in abeyance, right, for the.
I knew there was some legal term that would.
Abeyance.
There we go. I can see that I can do.
Yeah, which means it's on hold
It's
until.
on hold, there's no requirement for it for the next few years.
Okay, so maybe we can just get the language that they're using right now, they're telling the districts about what they're saying about it, like, just put this on hold until whenever, just so Director Long's committee has it?
There's a really nice summary, Mary, on which I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Personalized learning requirements for diploma, education plan profile, submitted application. Again, Yang can talk about.
And that's what we have applied, that's been modified. So you see that portfolio is,
But if we take out the essential skills, just like, hey, and then, 5 years from now, when they get back to it, the board can add it back. It will, I believe, open up a huge conversation about what are our standards. I think we're gonna have that conversation anyway, but
okay,
it will be taking out, I think, what people believed were the most, sort of minimal level of standards other than the credit hours.
okay.
And, I'm sorry, are we taking out the administrative directive because we don't need one? Or we don't need to say that? Is that why we're taking that?
Because we already have one. We actually have like
Okay,
four
so that's just
administrative
obvious.
directives related to this policy. So it's just it's done.
Here's the one I was looking at. In VA, so currently, in 2004 or 5, PPS, for example, created their world language credits. I don't think that's not a state requirement, I don't believe. That's a PPS requirement.
I recall this because we worked on it the last time we opened this policy up. There was a requirement that could combine, so you,
World languages, arts, CT.
right, and we in the district wanted to.
Well, no, that's the career and technical education, the arts, or a third credit in world language, but you still have to have 2 world languages.
Right,
2 years of world.
right, that's our personal.
Right, that's,
Our district.
so, for example, my question, I'm seeing here, this is maybe a question for the next meeting or for your committee, is I don't know that I've ever seen a report from the superintendent on the number of nature of waivers granted from the school year, or do we get those and I just?
Waivers, there's PE waivers that you get every year.
Pardon?
PE waivers.
Is that it?
That's the only one that you guys vote on, and there's information about.
My question is, do we have students, for example, who say, I actually speak, or like, French is not my, English isn't my first language, I already speak this other language, I'm not gonna get 2 credits in world language, I'm gonna get 22 credits, which meets the state requirements, but doesn't meet the PPS requirements. Has the superintendent been granting exceptions to the diploma? I think the world language is the only one we have that's in excess of the state diploma.
I don't know the answer.
I thought that if you did a world language, it had to be different from the one that you speak.
It's different than still on the university.
So here are the questions I'm gonna give to your committee. What requirements do we have that are beyond the state requirements? Because my understanding is that there is 22, and then the world language was ours, that was above and beyond
That was our extra.
state requirement. And then in 5A, the question is, has the superintendent been granting exceptions to the diploma requirements in excess of the state diploma requirements? And if so, what does that look like? I mean, it may not be an issue at all. And he may not have been doing it.
Don't know the answer.
But
Feeling
it
very
seems like-
loose right now.
Pardon?
Ignorant. Get used to it.
No.
Is that the only change?
I think we really need the academic folks here.
What I'm looking at the changes is look if there's any other
No, I think.
red line.
But the questions you want answered can be
We have people who know them like that.
They do. They're very defined.
Okay, well, the good news is, because they're not here, we might actually be done that. But I think I've outlined a set of questions that I had about this, that from a policy standpoint, not necessarily from an academic standpoint, but
So what I've heard is you'd like us to modify the essential skills to keep it in, but just put a kind of a caveat, so perhaps instead of a footnote. As opposed to.
like I say, I know Chair Collins has some thoughts about the essential skills. And
I think a
then
lot of us do.
we can get rid of the administrative directive, that's not a big deal. And then whether the credit requirements, this whole personal education plan, whether that mirrors the state. And then my only other question is around 5A. Did you all have other questions that are not curricular or within this committee, but just around policy? The changes.
I mean, my big question is just how does these policy changes affect what we're doing right now? I mean, besides the added requirements. But yeah, I mean, there's some stuff in the states that makes all that come. Yeah, I'm curious actually about the role.
Another one?
World language.
Oh, thanks.
It was a big issue at the state level because there were a lot of districts like Princeton. And
Where are they gonna go from enterprise?
people just, so that was, yes, that's wrong.
We should give every student the opportunity to speak that French. You know, as an adult,
I like good French.
that's even better.
So, yeah, and so you can also look at some of the ABs, one of which is essential skills of reading, writing, and mathematics for bilingual students. I think that's some of what you were asking about. There are 3 other administrative directives that sort of lay out more specifically some of the processes. So
Yeah.
no, just the, it's all under AIM 4 in the student section of policies, but if you look under diploma requirements, there's more than 4, 1, 2. There are 6.
So it might be useful for, jump along, when we create the committee agenda that has this on it, to have all the ADs so that
You can look to see how they, you may be in the.
Would those need to be updated too then? Like this?
that happens after we change the policy.
Yeah.
It depends on the changes, but whenever there's a policy change, just instruction to staff is to figure out if the ADs need to be updated or don't to be, whether they're consistent. So sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Sure.
Anything else? Step down. Okay, well, that's a game closer. Thank you, everybody. Jim? Yep, you're-